Hello everybody and welcome to Cryptic Corvid. Today we will be covering 3 of the magnificent creations of Trevor Henderson: the country road creature, the highway worm, and finally, the long horse. Before we get started, if you like what you see here today, please like and subscribe, as covering horror of all ranges, shapes, and sizes is all we do here, and I would love to have you aboard. Now, let's get into it. Considering this is my first video on Trevor Henderson, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of who he is, what he makes, and how the universe, or rather universes, in which these creatures exist, operate. So, Trevor Henderson, also known as Slimy Swamp Ghost, is a Canadian horror artist influenced by Junji Ito and Howard Phillips Lovecraft. He first launched his career illustrating cursed images and monstrosities on various platforms on the internet. Although many do not know him by name, hundreds of thousands know him from his creations, such as Bridgeworm, Cartoon Cat, and the beloved Siren Head. Now, despite the imagery and the obvious potential for mythos, for a long period of time, Trevor Henderson's creations remained one-off, creepy images. But as his work became more popular, and various fan theories, stories, and indie games launched his brand, he began to craft a very loose narrative connection by singling out his more popular creatures as reoccurring within their respective universes. Now, there exist 3 universes within the Trevor Henderson mythos, at least 3 that are well known and referenced, but it's implied that there are possibly infinite more. The first, very befittingly named the Giants, is a universe nearly identical to ours, with the exception of giant Leviathan-esque monsters and animals that are treated as regular occurrences. Some of the posts imply they are phenomena, others imply that they are simply large animals. Regardless, they exist and have become another threat to humans and animals alike. The second is where most of his cryptids lie. It's focused on ghosts and predatory monsters, some grounded and others so supernatural they cross dimensions to find us. Unlike the Giants verse, the general public in this world do not widely know of the monsters. Instead, they operate like cryptids do in our own world, unknown and dangerous. Finally, the third universe is unknown. It is fully up to speculation as to what fits into it. If I had to assume, this would house any creatures which conflict with the rules and laws of the others, basically like in alternate mythos. However, that's all just speculation. Perchance this universe is our own. Now, despite everything I just said, it's important to acknowledge that Trevor Henderson was not a writer at the time of his earlier posts. He's an illustrator. The most story we ever get from him are captions under the posts and reoccurring references. But according to Henderson himself, he finds lore to take away from the horror aspects of his universe, as fear comes from what is unknown, not from what is understood. This makes things difficult for theorists and lore lovers as myself, but I actually like this. In his attempt to hide the story, he handed the pen to his thousands of fans and as a result created a very similar phenomena as cryptids do today. With Henderson, what you tend to see is an image, such as Siren Head, where people will see it and think it's cool and they'll start writing stories or making video games, and that will just be passed on, kind of like how a cryptid is in culture. Because of this, everything becomes personalized to how people want to perceive the monsters, the creatures, the stories, whatever. And in that ambiguity of the lore, it kind of creates its own mythos. It's the lack of facts that actually allow for lore to thrive. It's what allows the community and fan base to thrive. It's because it's fun. Fundamentally, what makes it scary is what makes it fun. Every story is connected to a wider image, and as a result, everything has to be taken with a grain of salt, much like the tales of monsters and boogeymen today. It's unclear how Trevor himself feels about all this. He has made note to separate his work from the fandoms, but hasn't denounced anything said by them. Regardless, in this case, the artist only makes the image. It's the fascination and inspiration provided by the world that makes it art. So, with all that said, let's get into the 3 monsters, starting with the country road creature. The original post was uploaded October 24th, 2018. Above the post was one sentence: "Don't take the backcountry roads at night." The image shows an emaciated, hairless creature with pale white skin and abnormally elongated limbs. The creature seemingly crawling in front of the headlights of a fast-moving vehicle, presumably on a country road. The creature is immediately terrifying. It looks withered like an old man, but still spry like something young. And despite any real knowledge about the creature, we immediately assume that it's some sort of human predator with its front-facing eyes and overall creepy demeanor. Even though the fact that the image exists implies that the person who took it survived, it still gives off a creepy, helpless kind of feel, as even though it's skinny, you get the sense that it is strong and fast, as if the person who took the picture only narrowly survived. Now, the legend doesn't end there. This was only the original image, but both Trevor and the fandom began to add to the stories, its capabilities, and motivation. With more and more illustrations, the sheer height and strength of this creature began to become known. It is said to stand at a near 20 feet tall when on its hind legs, and crawl up into the trees before dropping onto its human prey below. The only sign that you're approaching it would honestly be the gleaming white eyes as they reflect from your car lights. Now, terrifying of course, yes, but honestly, if you were driving in a car probably at near 100 kilometers or miles an hour, logically you could assume that the creature wouldn't be a threat. Well, unfortunately, you'd be wrong. The creature houses unprecedented strength and speed, capable of stopping cars and even more unfortunately, catching up to them if you're lucky enough to swerve past its bony claws. It would appear akin to a cheetah chasing a gazelle, strong enough to pin down a car and more than capable of restraining any human. Of course, it doesn't end there, as tales of the monster have it doing the one thing I hate most: mimicry. As shown here, it has the capability to pretend. The creature can contort into a compact version of itself, appearing human, at least to the tired eye of someone driving late on the country roads. This implies a layer of intelligence that I'm sure you and I would much prefer it didn't have. Now I'm sure you're all thinking, well then, I won't take the country roads, at least not at night, and I'm sure as hell gonna avoid any dense woods or lanky hitchhikers. Except, it's really not that simple. As though the creature typically occupies the country roads, it's been known to leave when not enough prey crosses its territory. And, when it does, it picks a target, stalks them, until it's opportune to strike and eat them. But what's more, it seems as though when it leaves the roads, the creatures will resort to some less aggressive methods, such as somokinesis, which, if you're like me and didn't know what that was, it's the ability to control or influence someone as they sleep. Looking at some of this imagery, it kind of reminds me of the precursor to the Vita Carnis mimic, which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically this, except a little smaller and exists in an analog horror series, which I will eventually cover. But from a more accessible view, I guess, it looks more like the original depictions of the native Wendigo. The anorexic and lanky appearance kind of gives off that deformed Wendigo vibe, where it just has become a monster bent on destruction and killing. The Wendigo also did some psychological messing around, let's say, and somokinesis is much like that. But what makes somokinesis so terrifying is that it influences you when you are at your most helpless state. Nothing can save you when you're asleep, not even yourself. Even if the creature can only implant suggestions in you while you sleep, it still has a control over something that you don't have control over, and thus makes you helpless, regardless. Another thing that really distinguishes this creature from other creatures of the same type is that it isn't limited to one location. It can be on any country road, even if there is only one of them, and, like I just discussed, it can leave when it feels stressed that it's not getting enough food. But something that really interests me is that once it leaves the country roads, it seems to get less powerful, or at least use less aggressive means. I have 3 theories, I guess. One could be that being on the country road gives it some level of power. And by leaving, then that power leaves and it has to resort to some of its lesser accessible abilities. With that same mindset, then it's possible that using somokinesis is just not opportune when it's on the country road, so why would it ever use it? Although what I think is most likely is that after this creature eats, it gets a very strong power-up, and it kind of benefits from just going on rampages of taking multiple victims. But if it's not getting enough food, then it loses that strength. And when it leaves the country roads, it's weak, it's tired, and it has to resort to more of its more trickery-based tactics, like mimicry and sommokinesis. Now, little stories have really covered its origins, and honestly I couldn't find any, so if I had to assume, it's just a monster that exists. I don't think it's paranormal, I think it was transformed or something, but then again, its abilities could suggest otherwise. Based on reasons that I'll probably discuss later in this video, I'm gonna assume that in the Trevor Henderson universes, it actually fits into the third one, because it's too small to be in the first one, and like I said, future information suggests it's probably not in the second one. So yeah, I'm gonna say third one. All in all, a terrifying creature. I hope this one stays out of my nightmares, and I'll be avoiding the country roads from taking me home. Up next is the highway worm. Not to be confused with the bridge worm, the highway worm is a titanous variation of its species that exists in the first universe of the giants. The original image, reminiscent of the country road creature, shows someone driving on a highway that seems to bend around a large hill or mountain. In front of them leaps out a humongous, fleshy, snake-like worm with glowing yellow eyes and what appears to be a human mouth. Now, despite the absolutely horrific imagery in a completely hopeless situation, the caption remains rather calm. Quote, "Warning, other state fauna heavy area. Look out for falling rocks or worms," making the beast appear to just be another daily hazard. So immediately this worm seems completely unstoppable. It's hard to judge its size by just the image alone, but you can tell that it's way bigger than the vehicle itself, and you'd likely have no chance of surviving it even if you were to ram into it full speed. Considering this is the first universe, the wording of the post is quite important, as it says rocks or worms, implying that there is multiple worms all around the country or even the world. Which begs the question, what could you even do about this? Is there a way to stop the worms? Could you just drive backwards if you saw it come out? Are you just doomed? It's terrifying, but the fact that people are talking calmly about it implies that there might be a way to get out of the situation. Now, regular worm mouths are scary as is, so it seems very unnecessary to give it a human mouth. That being said, the addition of a human mouth is uncanny. It feels icky, and also as if the worm has a layer of intelligence. But that's just human bias, I guess. With this image in mind, and of course its context, let's get into some of its lore. So, the highway worm is theorized to be some sort of massive genetic mutation that resulted in, well, a supersized worm-like creature. This is, of course, only a theory, and supernatural elements are not off the table. According to research, the creature averages at around 19.80 meters, or 65 feet, which is about the length of a megalodon shark, or more accessibly, a sperm whale. Its skin is bumpy and leathery as opposed to the patterned smooth and slimy worms we are familiar with. Its back end also ends narrow, like a snake. According to the accounts of the monster, it finds locations close to highways, around bushes, hills, signs, and creates a kind of hiding spot. It then curls up and waits. It is reported only to attack solo drivers, and only between the late evening to early dawn. Waiting until the road is clear and quickly launching, flipping, or crushing cars, quickly snatching the driver where they are presumed to be eaten. Now, the more you learn about this creature, the less it feels like a worm at all. Worms are already sensitive to light, yet this one has eyes. It's leathery and not slimy, and the back of it is like a snake. It's possible that the only reason it's given the name of a worm is because it shares some of the worm's abilities. Perchance it can split into two and become two whole separate worms, or maybe it's just really good at burrowing. Regardless, it seems quite smart, smarter than the average predator, but then again, it is very stuck to its routines, so possibly it isn't. The biggest question I have is, why does it only attack solo drivers? What's stopping it from using its massive jaws to capture an entire bus of people. If I had to assume, it's because it doesn't want its hiding spot to be found and have to leave. But again, that's just speculation. Another big question is, what do governments do about these things? Are they rare problems? It's clear that they send out warnings and try to get people to make the right decisions, but they clearly haven't taken a big enough step to stop the species from being a threat. Maybe there's so many it would be futile to try, or maybe there's so few that it's such a rare problem you could barely do anything about it. But judging on the way they're treated, it seems to just be like a natural disaster. You can't stop a tornado, you can only prepare for it. It's kind of like that. Regardless, it's a scary creature, but I don't really think it should be all that feared. I mean, the way people talk about it in the universe implies that it's just an inconvenience, a freak accident. To us, it is terrifying, but to them, it's completely normal. It's just one of those things that happens, like a random animal attack. Like the same way when you go on a hike, you're not really afraid of getting attacked by a bear. I assume it's the same thing. When you're driving on a highway, you're not really concerned about being attacked by a highway worm. Now maybe this is just my own personal preference, but I actually think this creature is scarier if there was only one highway worm, and you never really knew where it was, but you knew that it was completely unstoppable. Well, regardless, the creature is a threat to us, which inherently adds to the fear factor. Of course, fear of the uncanny and fear of the immediate threat seems to overwhelm our rational thought. If the threat can be perceived, it can at the very least be avoided. That's not the case for our last creature, but not in the way that you might think. The long horse, lesser known as the dream horse. The original image has the pale creature bend around a tree into what looks to be an urban green space. The creature's head is a large, elongated skull of a horse with no eyes or no jaw, completely void of character or expression. Along the back of the head and start of the neck drapes a balding mane that appears to be wet, or rather greasy. Its neck bends like a finger, sharp with many joints and fluid, finally raising into the sky above. The caption: "Every night it curved into his dreams, folding into view around impossible corners, one gaping socket always on him as it silently glided." He thought putting some distance between the thing he'd found in the attic and himself might help, but no. It met him on the road. 2 more posts would later be added, one saying, "I had that dream again," about the horse on the stairs, and one saying, "A new sighting, it's on the move." Now, my immediate impression of this creature is that it actually doesn't look like a threat. Yes, it's abstract, it's monstrous, it's a skull, but it doesn't look like it's going to chase you down or wrap around you like a snake. It feels like it's debilitated, like it can't harm you if it tried. Now, the most important thing here is actually context, as this creature isn't really what it seems. So, let's get into the bare bones lore. The long horse is a confirmed interdimensional entity, not from the worlds he most appears in. Unlike the majority of Henderson's creations, this one is not in any way meant to cause harm. He is a harbinger, symbolizing dangers not yet realized. The only fear the horse brings is the fear of the unknown threat in your wake. According to accounts by both Trevor and the stories alike, the long horse has taken a warm interest in humans. Be it out of fascination, hope, altruism, he believes that the human ought to be protected, but due to his limitations, he can only do such by his appearance. The long horse only appears to someone when they are in danger. So, with that in mind, let's look back at the original quote about the guy who found something in the attic and tried to escape the horse. It's clear that he thought that the horse was warning him about the dangers of the attic, but considering that it followed him, it might imply that the danger lied within him. Perchance he was a danger to himself by virtue of his mental state. If this is true, it implies some level of omnipotence or telepathy that allows it to understand people on a deeper level. But it's possible that the creature simply just knows when a threat is present and simply followed him because he knew that the threat was somewhere around him. Theories like these have sparked debates on the horse's origins. Some theories have it being just a freak accident, and all of a sudden this creature has extended to infinite lengths across different universes, and just has these abilities now and decides to use them for good. Another famous theory is that the long horse is actually some sort of angel or deity that was sent from wherever to help humans, to guide humans, to protect them. This is likely sparked by, well, its appearance. The long horse is abstract geometry. It doesn't feel like it fits into this world, and that's what brings a lot of people's eyes to it. That and the fact that it's 100% friendly has made it one of the fan favorites, and of course Trevor's, meaning it's actually gotten a lot more lore and attention than his other creations. According to Trevor, the long horse has the smell of cinnamon, and its skin is like that of wax. As it moves, the creature's joints crack, and as it bends, it creates more joints. What makes this creature interesting is its completely abstract form and presence. Apparently the creature's neck extends infinitely, and, like a needle threading fabric, it finds itself pushing through various dimensions and universes. It is in every sense of the word incomprehensible, as at the end of the neck exists a body literally impossible to perceive, to the point that Trevor Henderson doesn't really know if it exists, if it could exist, as even if it does, he could never draw it. There are some more interesting findings of the long horse, specifically the ancient cave paintings that depict the long horse as a protector of humans, as well as the long horse's confirmed relationship with other Trevor Henderson monsters, such as Cartoon Cat and Siren Head. As it prevents them from causing harm to humans, they have become natural enemies. If I had to guess, the long horse occupies the second universe, but it obviously isn't limited to just that one. What I find interesting and kind of funny is that its purpose is almost ironic. The creature is so unnerving to most people that in an attempt to try and warn people, they end up being afraid of not only it, but also afraid of whatever it's warning them of. It's very likely that just seeing the long horse would inspire someone to make a rather poor decision that could result in them getting hurt, but I guess it goes both ways. So there are some interesting theories. One of which being that as people observe the neck, it gets longer. So if someone were to look in the direction of the body, the neck would fill up that space. So it's never really infinite, but it has the potential to be infinite, because there's infinite dimensions, infinite people, infinite eyes, and so on. Another theory is that the length of the neck that you see is in relation to the threat. For example, if you only saw a foot of the neck, then you wouldn't really be in much danger. Maybe you're about to trip or run into a tree. But if you were to see, perchance, a mile of the neck, maybe Siren Head is standing right beside you. I could imagine that if you were to run into this creature, even if you didn't really know what it meant or what it was going to do, it would still be incredibly unnerving because it's so huge. It makes you feel small, and even more so when you know what it is, because you know that it's infinite in size. It's a very megalophobia kind of feel. Well, let's end off on a high note, because the long horse is one of the only Trevor Henderson monsters that is considered 100% friendly. And because of such, it has gained a lot of attention. It doesn't have to be scary, so Henderson felt no need to keep large aspects of it a secret. And, might I say, the long horse is kind of wholesome. Like I said before, the long horse has a passive, warm fascination and concern for people. And in his years, it seems as though he's also gained a lot of appreciation for human culture. According to Henderson, the long horse has come to appreciate human music, at least most of it, and despite that, he cannot sing himself. What's more, he has also come to appreciate human gifts. Although being a creature of his sapience, he does not require them. Despite his love for humanity, the long horse is afraid of harming a human mentally. Its presence is incomprehensible, and its social meeting is a net negative. So, as such, he decides to remain hidden until danger arrives. So with that in mind, he kind of comes off as cute. I mean, yes, his meaning is, like I said, a net negative, and you're probably gonna die if you see him, but it's kind of nice to know that it doesn't mean any harm. The last fun fact I'll give about this creature is that apparently it actually can be ridden, but because the long horse is so intelligent, it's kind of perceived as disrespectful. Anyways, that's all, so I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please like, subscribe, maybe hit the bell, and leave a comment if you're cool like that. And I will see you next time.
When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do.